The emergency lights painted the corridor in shades of amber and shadow. Dr. Mira then checked her datapad for the third time in as many minutes, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Station Kepler-7's environmental systems had failed 12 hours ago, and with them, the carefully maintained barriers between the residential sectors. She hadn't expected to find anyone in Sector D. The evacuation protocols had been clear, all personnel to the central hub. But the soft chittering that echoed through the empty halls made her pause, one hand instinctively moving to the thermal blanket folded over her shoulder. "Hello?" Her voice carried down the metallic corridor, bouncing off walls lined with dormant research equipment. The chittering stopped. Then cautiously, a small shape emerged from behind a collapsed storage container. Mira's breath caught. A Valith cub, no larger than a house cat, with silver-blue fur matted from the cold and wide bioluminescent eyes that flickered with fear and exhaustion. The species was rare this far from the core worlds, valued for their remarkable intelligence and empathic abilities. This one couldn't have been more than a few months old. "It's all right," Mira said softly, crouching to make herself less threatening. "I'm not going to hurt you." The cub's ears, delicate, almost translucent, twitched. Then another sound reached her, more chittering from deeper in the sector. The cub turned its head, calling back, and 3 more small forms appeared from the darkness. 4 cubs, alone in a dying station. Mira's mind raced through protocols, regulations, the chain of command. The Valith were a protected species. There should have been handlers, guardians, someone responsible for their safety. But the corridor was empty save for her and these lost children, and the temperature was dropping by the hour. Regulations could wait. "Come here," she whispered, unwrapping her coat, a heavy thermal-lined garment designed for deep space work. She spread it on the floor, creating a small nest. "It's warm. You'll be safe." The cubs hesitated, their collective gaze fixed on her. Valith were telepathic within their family groups, she remembered from the xenobiology briefings. They were probably consulting each other, weighing the risk of trusting this strange, tall being against the very real danger of the cold. The smallest one, the first she'd seen, took a tentative step forward. Its eyes met hers, and Mira felt an odd pressure at the back of her mind, like a gentle knock on a door. Not intrusive, just asking. She opened herself to it, projecting warmth, safety, protection. The cub darted forward and pressed itself against her leg. The others followed in a tumbling rush of silver-blue fur, all of them seeking the warmth of her body, the shelter of her coat. She wrapped them carefully, feeling their small forms shiver against her. "There you are," she murmured. "I've got you, but they couldn't stay here." Sector D was losing pressure, and the cold would only worsen. She needed to get them to the central hub, to the evacuation ships, but the journey would take hours through the damaged station, hours of navigating pitch-black corridors, collapsed sections, and failing systems. Mira gathered the coat with its precious cargo against her chest and began to move. The cubs were quiet at first, trusting or simply too exhausted to protest, but as they traveled deeper into the station's maze, they became restless. The smallest one, Mira found herself thinking of him as Rin, though she had no idea if that was appropriate, began to whimper, a sound that tore at her heart. "I know," she whispered. "I know you're scared, but we're going to make it." They searched the station through the long night, or what passed for night in the artificial cycle of the orbital facility. Every corridor they tried seemed to lead to another dead end, another collapsed section, another sealed bulkhead. The cubs grew more agitated, their telepathic distress bleeding into Mira's mind as a constant ache of worry. She could have left them. The rational part of her brain whispered it more than once. She could have cached them somewhere relatively safe, marked the location, and come back with a proper rescue team. It would have been faster, more efficient. But humans didn't leave children behind. Not their own and not anyone else's. So she carried them. Through flooded compartments where she waded chest-deep in freezing water, holding the coat above her head. Through maintenance shafts where she had to crawl on her belly, the cubs clinging to her back. Through sections so dark that she relied entirely on the bioluminescent glow of their eyes to see. Dawn, when it came, was artificial, the station's lights flickering back to partial power as the engineering teams finally managed to restore some systems. By then, Mira had reached the central hub, Her legs were numb, her arms ached, and her thermal suit was torn in a dozen places. But the cubs were safe. She found a quiet corner in the evacuation bay, away from the chaos of the emergency crews and frightened civilians. The cubs tumbled from her coat, exploring this new space with renewed energy now that warmth had returned, all except Rin, who stayed pressed against her side, his small body rising and falling with exhausted breaths. Mira slumped against the wall and spread her coat over them both. Rin curled tighter against her, his purring, a sound she hadn't known Valeth could make, vibrating through her ribcage. "Sleep," she murmured, her own eyes growing heavy. "You're safe now." A Valeth handler arrived within the hour, frantic with worry and relief. The cub's mother had been evacuated separately, injured in the initial systems failure. Protocol said the cubs should have been transferred immediately. But the handler, seeing Rin's small form nestled beneath the human woman's coat, seeing the way all 4 cubs had arranged themselves around their protector, simply nodded. "Let them rest," she said quietly. "They've earned it." "And so have you, Dr. Venn." Mira didn't respond. She was already asleep, her coat spread like a shelter over the cubs who had searched the dying station all night and finally found, in the warmth of a human's compassion, a place to call safe. In the years that followed, when the Valeth joined the galactic community as full partners, they would tell this story, not as an oddity but as an example. Humans, they would say, were the species who didn't abandon children in the dark. Any children ever that was worth remembering.